going to the cloud. Recording in progress. All right. So here we go again. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I'm so happy to see so many of you here. We are celebrating today the Women Equality Day, protecting our rights to vote for the next 100 years. We had this event last year with a shared of two BPW organizations, and this year it is BPW Florida who put it together for you. So my name is Ilya Chapman, and I am the Vice President of the Business and Professional Women Florida. And it's my honor to be your host here tonight. We have a full agenda, and we mean it to be informative, but also a little bit fun. And you will hear from our president of the BPW Florida, Sheri Mcanlis, and the president of the League of Women Voters Florida, Cecile Schoon. So a few housekeeping items. I think I muted everybody, but maybe not. I'm looking at Susie here. Maybe she can mute the people. If you do have a question, just raise your hands in the actual, like where it says below reactions, and you can put your hands in, and then we can see what questions you have. And we do kind of ask you to keep the chat amongst each other to the minimum, because it does pop up and it's sometimes distracting when we have the speakers. So we like to start with a tradition amongst the business and professional women, which is reading the collect. And let me give you a quick history of the collect. So Mary Stewart wrote the collect in 1904, and it was written as a prayer to instill a sense of unity among women working together with the widest interest and important goals. She worked for women's suffrage nationally, and she attended a meeting in St. Louis in 1919, at which the National Federation was launched. And she was actually elected the first correspondence secretary, and thereafter she served for many more organizations. And the collect was reprinted in many forms around the world, and she was involved with business and professional women until she passed away in 1943. So I think it's a very historic document. And here to read tonight the collect for us is our fellow business and professional women sister, Jeanette Hughes. She is the CEO at Marine Resources Development Foundation, and she is an Upper Keys Business and Professional Women member since 2018, but she also is the president of the League of Women Voters Upper Keys. Jeanette, some of you might have seen her as a poll worker during the election at the Monroe County office, and voter education, as I understand for Jeanette, is a personal priority for her. She said that she enjoys being in the trenches when it comes to helping people exercise their voting duty and experience. So if you don't see Jeanette in any of those capacities, you will probably see her on the water, kayaking, or sailing, or any of the fun ones. So I'm going to ask her to unmute, and then I'm going to share my screen with the collect so we can read it with her. Hold on. Give me 1 second so I can find it. What did I do with it? Oh, there it is. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right, take it away, Jeanette.
Okay. Keep us, O God, from pettiness. Let us be large in thought, in word, in deed. Let us be done with fault finding and leave off self-seeking. May we put away all pretense and meet each other face to face, without self-pity and without prejudice. May we never be hasty in judgment and always generous. Let us take time for all things. Make us to grow calm, serene, gentle. Teach us to put into action our better impulses, straightforward and unafraid. Grant that we may realize it is the little things that create differences, that in the big things of life we are at one. And may we strive to touch and to know the great common human heart of us all. And O Lord God, let us forget not to be kind.
Thank you. Let me unshare this. There we go. All right. So I actually like to start with a little trivia. I promised a little trivia game here. There's no real prizes, just more than what we know. Hold on. Where is my poll? Well, you're logged in from another device. Your polling session is inactive, Susie. I think I'm in trouble here. Why is that? I didn't test this earlier. So my poll looks like is not going to work. So I'm just going to ask the question anyway, and you can share it in the chat.
Yeah, the poll is there.
Okay, you see it?
Yeah. Trivia game 1.
Yeah, question 1 is coming up. Can you share it?
I think I can.
Okay, because I don't seem to be able to.
Did that do it?
No.
Okay, it came up on my.
Yes, I can see it too.
Oh, well, that's great. Everybody can see it but me. That's perfect. So
Well,
answer the question.
I lost it as well, so
So you want to answer the question?
yeah, I can't.
Oh, you can't?
So everyone doesn't see the poll?
Sheri, you see the poll?
I saw it.
Can you answer it?
I saw it and I answered too.
Okay.
And all I see are the results. I could not answer it.
I think that's because you're a host. That's all I'm seeing too, Sheila. I think because we're logged, maybe.
Okay. So what was the question, Susie?
In what year did women get the right to vote in the USA?
Well, that was an easy one, right? But I did try to trick you. So yes, it's 1920. Did everybody have that right, Susie?
82% got 1920.
Okay. All right.
Good job.
So let's go to the next question, which is what was the first country that granted the women the right to vote? And we have 3 options there. It's either New Zealand, the Netherlands, or Finland. Can everybody see the question?
No, hold on.
It's trivia question 2. Well,
Here it comes.
There it comes. Yeah,
There, is that
there's
now?
your question. What was the first country that granted women the right to vote? Was it New Zealand, the Netherlands, or was it Finland? Yeah, do we have a score coming in?
They are still coming in.
Oh, nice. I didn't want to make it too difficult for you, but me being international, I thought we should know this one, right?
The majority looks like they say New Zealand.
New Zealand, yes, and that was actually in 1893. Finland was the second country in 1906, and the Netherlands didn't grant the women the right to vote until 1919, but still earlier than the US. All right, well, let me continue to the next speaker for tonight. And I'd like to introduce Sheri Mcanlis, who is the president of the Business and Professional Women Florida. And she will tell us a little bit about today. She's been a BPW member actually for 27 years. Yes, she joined in 1994. That's a while ago. She's super passionate about our mission and the opportunities and the experiences and relations that she creates by being part of our organization. She lives in the rural suburbs of Palm Beach County. There are some horses there if you look on her Facebook page. And she has a wonderful husband, and they've been married for 43 years. I personally enjoy working with Sheri a lot and being under her leadership. And I would say, Sheri, take it away. You want to unmute yourself?
Okay, there we are. Thank you, Madam Vice President, and for that introduction. I enjoy working with you too. It's going to be a great year for all of us. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for attending this educational celebration tonight. It's my pleasure to share with you a brief history of why we celebrate Women's Equality Day and how it came about. Today, we pay tribute to thousands of women who envisaged a government in which men and women had an equal voice and who, through agitation and persistent mobilization, brought about change. The continuous struggle for women's participation and equality in all spheres of life and society is observed on Women's Equality Day, which is celebrated in the United States to commemorate the 1920 adoption of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which prohibits the states and federal government from denying the right to vote to citizens of the United States on the basis of sex. Congress designated August 26th as Women's Equality Day in 1973. It is celebrated every year, honoring the passage of women's suffrage in the U.S., reminding us of the hurdles overcome by the heroic women who faced violence and discrimination to propel the women's movement forward. So how about going a little deeper into the history of Equality Day? The right to vote is the cornerstone of our democracy, belongs to all citizens, but that wasn't always the case. American women who generally couldn't inherit property and made half of a man's wages in any available jobs at the time began organizing to demand political rights and representation in the early 19th century. In 1848, Lucretia Mott, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and several other women decided to call a women's rights meeting in Seneca Falls, New York. The Seneca Falls meeting was the first in support of women's rights, though it was not the first activism for women's suffrage. The group voted on a set of resolutions they called the Declaration of Sentiments, written by Stanton and modeled after Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Sentiments called for a long list of women's rights, including access to education and job opportunities, more power within the church, the right to control one's own property and their money. Women's suffrage, which is the women's right to vote, was the most controversial resolution and was the only clause that the attendees did not unanimously adopt. While the vote was not originally the main goal of the reformers, suffrage became central to the women's rights movement in the 1860s. By the early 1900s, several countries, including, we just talked about them, Finland, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, had legalized voting for women as the movement continued to sweep across the world. In the US, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was first introduced in 1878, but it failed to gain traction. It wasn't until the women's involvement in the World War I effort made their contributions painfully obvious that women's suffrage finally gained enough support. Women's rights groups pointed out the hypocrisy of fighting for democracy in Europe while denying it to half of the American citizens at home. It was during this period that BPW came into existence. In 1917, the War Department established the War Work Council to further organize the efforts of women with the help of executives from the YWCA and a government grant. The council gathered information about women in all disciplines and invited 2 women prominent in their chosen fields from each state east of the Rockies to meet in New York City in May of 1918. Where the National Businesswomen's Committee, or NWBC, was formed. After the armistice was signed, NWBC members refused to let the project die, and the Secretary of War agreed that the organization of women should be continued as a post-war project. In March of 1919, the NWBC recommended establishment of state federations and called for a meeting of delegates of the states at a national convention to be held in St. Louis in July of 1919. With the objective of founding a permanent national organization. From this convention, the National Federation of Business and Professional Women's Clubs was created, and in later years referred to as BPW USA. And our own Florida Federation, now known as BPW Florida, was formed in that same year. But let me get back to the Equality Day history. Because a constitutional amendment requires approval from 2/3 of the states, 36 of them had to ratify the 19th Amendment before its passage. The deciding vote in the Tennessee legislature came from Harry T. Byrne, a young state representative whose mother's plea to support the amendment became a deciding factor in his vote. In fact, he was known to support the opposition to it, but at the last minute switched. So it pulled up. It was an exact tie until he changed his mind. So that was a little coup for us. Yay for women. Thank you, Mr. Byrne. It should be noted that not all Western women received the vote with ratification of the 19th Amendment. Women of color did not, and Native American women were not considered U.S. citizens and were not able to vote, although they did help with the effort. We have come a long way since the 19th Amendment added women to the US Constitution, but women aren't done fighting for equal rights. Today, the wage gap between men and women still impacts women's economic power, and gender-based discrimination still plagues workplaces and business transactions. The information I shared with you this evening came from several sources. I found information on the website nationaltoday.com, and also the book that you see behind me, A Vote for Women, that was published for the last year's Centennial Initiative, and it tells and depicts the history of women's suffrage movement. And I also referred to our own BPW Florida Handbook, which has the history of how BPW was formed. The struggle to earn the right to vote for women has long and hard, and we should never take that right for granted. As president of the Business and Professional Women's Club of Florida, I am pleased to partner with the League of Women Voters this evening as we honor and celebrate 101 years of achieving that right. Today, we are in a political environment where the rights of voters are being slowly eroded. This evening's speaker, the president of the League of Women Voters of Florida, will be leading us into a conversation about protecting our right to vote for the next 100 years. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you. That was a lot of information. Don't worry, you will not get tested on that. But that was very good. Thank you, Sheri. I think we should do a little trivia question though. Susie, do you mind helping me with trivia question number 3, which is which state was the first state to make it legal for women to vote in the national election? And keep in mind that some of the states actually allowed women to vote before 1920. So which of the states? And let me know when you have the results coming in. Which state? You got some results there, Susie?
We do have results. If you haven't voted yet, vote.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, done voting. This is your right to vote.
So can you see the results?
I can't. What is
It
it?
looks like 88% said Wyoming.
Yes, and and that's correct. So bravo. And I do want to note as well that Mississippi didn't ratify the 19th Amendment until 1984, ladies. That was pretty late. So they were one of the last states, actually. Let's do one more question before I will introduce our speaker. So what is question number 4?
Question 4, who was the first woman to run for president?
And we don't mean the president of the Business and Professional Women or the president of the League of Women Voters. We mean the actual president for the United States. Who of the 3 women there was the first one to run? And I might tell you even in what year, if you got it right, of course, otherwise I won't mention it.
Still
How
have
are we
some
doing?
coming in, so let's give it just a minute.
All right. I see some new people joined. Thank you for joining here. We're about to hear from our keynote speaker, Cecile Schoon. I see Alyssa there, Cynthia, Lisa, Emma, April. Thank you all for joining. Nice to have you.
All right, Ilya, the results are in. Again, 88% said Victoria Woodhull.
And that is correct. Wow, well educated. You see, I didn't want to make it too complicated. And she ran actually for president in 1872. So that was a little trivia I learned myself. So let me introduce our speaker for tonight, Cecile Schoon. She is the president of the League of Women Voters of Florida. And she received a visual and an environmental studies undergrad degree from Harvard in 1981. She's currently, she shared it a little bit earlier with us, a civil rights lawyer in Panama City, Florida. And after graduating from the University of Virginia School of Law in 1984, she spent 5 years in the active duty Air Force JAG prosecuting in military courts martial. She retired from the AF Reserves as a major in 2005. Cecile attempts to protect the right of those at work due to their race, religion, age, disability, place of birth, or unwanted sexual advantage. When not burning the midnight oil, drafting lengthy pleadings, right, Cecile? She enjoys her 3 children, as well as running, gardening, painting, and watching soccer matches with her best friend, husband, law partner, and League of Women Voters member, Alvin Peters. She currently serves, as I said, as the president of the League of Women Voters in Florida. And without further ado, I would say, help me welcome Cecile. And I would say, Cecile, take it away. It's all yours. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you all. It's an honor and quite fun to be with you. I love all the costumes and the history, and want to share with you that when you read the collect, that's the exact same collect of a women's club that I'm a member of in Panama City. And it's the women's club. It's a federation. And the one of the ideas that I wanted to share with you, written by the same woman, of course, and many of our objectives are exactly the same. And one of the ideas I wanted to share in terms of how do we protect our vote is I really think that we need to look around at the women's organizations and realize our similarities. And that one was just like a perfect example. I didn't realize that your collect was the exact same one that I listen to at least once a month. You know, before all of our meetings, you read the collect and just remind you of the vision of so many of the women that came before us and did that hard work. So that's one of the themes that I wanted to share, and it was really heartwarming to hear it. And I want to share with you some of my ideas sort of through my lived experiences. I have a life where I feel like I've been at the intersection of so many rivers of opportunity. I was born right after the civil rights movement, basically, and got all the benefits and did none of the heavy lift. But there were opportunities for women. There were opportunities for people of color and educational scholarships and all sorts of things. The doors had been shut in the past. And I really, really benefited from all of those things. And I think many of us have, even the younger women like Ilya, we've all benefited from the work and the efforts of many other people that we'll never know. And I think one of the things that we need to do to protect our right to vote for the next 100 years is to really take note of the sacrifices that they put out there, and that it's not too big of a burden for us to put our shoulders to the wheel and to work together collectively to increase opportunities and to prevent the incursions against our opportunities that are ongoing. And so part of it is awareness, and having programs like this is really, really, really important just to bring it to people's minds. I know, again, with the intersectionality of my life, my father was born in another country and I was raised in another country in the Caribbean. And I can put on a real thick accent if I want to, and I'll try it out so you guys can hear it. Me not forget what you say, you know. And probably you didn't understand what I said, but I said, I don't care. I don't care what you say, is what I said. That's sort of one of those little things when you're having an argument. But having grown up in another country, it's made me really uh, appreciate. I came back to the States, I was 15, you know, the opportunities in our country that many, many countries don't have. I mean, back home, I would see many people walking barefoot for miles. It wasn't anything. It was nothing. People they would have their shoes in their hand, like going to church. You would carry your shoes, walk 2 miles, and then put your shoes on to go to church to show respect for the institution. But that's how poor people were, but people weren't unhappy. But I think that experience of coming from another nation and then learning the American history as a sort of a young adult has given me a very a sharp sense of the work that others have done, you know, for us all to have these rights and benefits. And it's awakened in my heart a commitment to carry on the civil rights work, which is why I do that work in my law practice. I always told my husband, I said, baby, because he's my classmate in law school and my law partner. And I told him in the beginning, because you don't know how you're going to make a living being a civil rights lawyer. You win some, you lose some, and they take a long time. So I told him, you do the money and I'll do the justice. But together, he's done many, many things that are to help civil rights. So we have like a little community center law firm in a small town. So what can we do to protect our voting rights in the next 100 years? I would say the first thing is be aware of the history of and the work that the suffragettes did, that the abolitionists did. Many of the, which I learned going to Seneca Falls, many of the suffragettes were actually started out as abolitionists. Isn't that amazing? What a wonderful story. And it's the story of when you put yourself out to care about others and how others are suffering, you can often learn about yourself, because many of those women wanted to speak up and they were told, no, you can't. And they're like, whoa, we need to get our right to vote. And it was really a good engine to energize that struggle and energize people to work that hard, many of whom never saw the benefit of the right to vote. So the first thing is be aware. I mean, activities like this are one way to educate ourselves. And I think it's okay and it's fine for us to talk to our younger women, and talk to our sons, talk to our husbands, talk to the men in our lives. We need to verbalize and let them know that the right to vote was hard won. And as we see threats to easy access to voting around the entire state, the entire nation and our state, we realize how fragile all of that is. And I think sometimes we don't want to bring it up. You don't want to be like the downer and say things, but I think it's our opportunity as we become aware ourselves in an instance where somebody might be expressing something or saying something that's gender-based or racist or nationalistic or some kind of ism that's harming another group, that's just a stereotype. It's okay for us to speak up and let them know that that is something that is concerning to us. I think it strengthens our resolve to have those conversations on a personal level, so we can bring our awareness that we learn to our community. And that will soften some of the people who might think that they're in the right. Of course we can take away a woman's right to choose, as what we see going on in Texas. Of course we've got to protect, the unborn, and they're not looking at the side of how is that going to impact women? How is that going to impact women's ability to have businesses, to have the freedom to go to school, to, to be able to be involved in the political world. So I think, educating ourselves, supporting ourselves and our ideas, and having those conversations, those real conversations, and not screaming, which I know none of you would do, but I'm just saying heartfelt conversations. Do you understand what you just said? I think that's part of the hard work. And I know I've had to make that decision many, many times. Do I speak up now? Am I going to be that one? And you have to pick and choose, because you don't want to go around, just exhausted. But there are times, in a business meeting, it could be a business meeting, you could be on a bank board or whatever, where it's important for you to speak up and let them know that an action that they're going to take or not take would be in furtherance of limiting other people's rights, whether it be economic rights or economic opportunities or voting opportunities. So I think we just need to return to the civility that's mentioned in the collect and be able to have conversations. And that takes a little bravery on our side. But when you educate yourself and we share that knowledge with each other, that gives you a grounding that you can take that knowledge to other people. And a corollary to that is, again, through my vision and my experiences, I am a member of several different women's organizations, many of which are very similar. And I mentioned one, the Women's Federation, that we have a little clubhouse, and we do many, many community outreach activities, and probably very similar, except we don't have the business side. Which actually I really love the business side. That's important. That's part of our freedom. If you have economic freedom and you can hire and fire and make decisions, and you are wielding power in the world, that's very, very important, and is a corollary to being able to vote. Because in the larger world, you're seen as a strong force, you're an employer, you have status, you're part of the community. And it's a relatively easy translation for you to become a representative or become involved in politics. So the work that you're doing, supporting women in business, I think is very closely aligned with women having the right to vote and women having a voice. And many of you probably have been in situations where you've been the only woman in the room, right? And you got to be aware, but we just, by being there, by being present, by being effective, by being running a good business, we're making a lot of statements, and a lot of the men in the room are learning our capacity. And I think, again, that corollary is the same thing with women being involved in politics, either helping to work on a campaign or register people to vote, like the League of Women Voters likes to do in a nonpartisan way. But being present and being there is very important. So we can strengthen each other by acknowledging the similarities that we have in the different organizations. I'm wearing, in honor of that concept, a pin from with my sorority, one of my organizations. It's the AKA's, Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated sorority. It's the oldest historically Black sorority in the nation, the largest, the strongest, and it is the sorority of our Vice President, Miss Kamala Harris. So, and many of the things, and we're nonpartisan also, and we do a lot of community work, but many of the things that we do are parallel to the things that your organization does, the Business and Professional Women of Organization. It's parallel and comparable to many of the things in the Women's Federation, that organization that I belong to. It's parallel and comparable to many of the things that we do in the League of Women Voters. So what I'm saying to you is I've had this kind of unique experience of being a member of several women's organizations that look kind of different, and you might think that they're very different, but we're really fighting and working for the same thing. And I think when we start to realize that and work together, as you have been doing, but look across the aisle and think of ways that maybe you can work with a historically Black organization, the sorors, and think of ways to do that. And what could be some ways to do that? Well, if you see someone in pink and green That's probably one of the ways. And a lot of the and there are several women's organizations, historically Black sororities, and I'd be happy to send a list of them and you can look, but many times they have their chapters listed, very similar to like the League. We have our chapters, and I know the Business and Professional Women of Florida, they have their chapters. They want people to know, where you can talk and get together personally. And look at their website and see what activities they have that maybe you can partner with, whether it's a joint voter registration event or something of that nature. So I think when we work together and we strengthen our bonds with each other, that will help us to protect our rights going forward, because we'll realize we are basically saying, we are strong, we are here, we're not going backwards, no matter what other people want or expect. We want our economic freedom. We want our independently owned businesses. We want representatives that speak to our issues. We want women leading us as politicians. We want all of those things. And I think when we work together and acknowledge the similarities, that's going to be much more within our reach. And again, it's so powerful that the first thing you did was read the collect that I listened to. And that's like a literal example of, wow, we're on the same page, And so, and like, when I go to my sorority meetings, I try to share that kind of information and connections. Something that our organization did, our Women's Federation did last Martin Luther King celebration. Our present president of our Women's Federation is also the president of the Daughters of the DAR. And so she wanted to do something. And so we got the three groups together: League of Women Voters, the DAR, and our Women's Club. And we sponsored a table at the Martin Luther King celebration, which is a predominantly often, very African-American experience. And it was so great to have our tables there. And the kids were running up. We had children's activities, and we did a art thing. But the goodwill and the connection that occurred on everybody's side. The children don't care what you look like. They're running up to the table. You got crayons, you got stickers, you got glitter. And then come the parents, and they got to talk, and you were one-on-one. Because I think sometimes when we're different, it can be a little formal. One of the suggestions that I have for any group is, if you want to get to know a community and have outreach, let's say you wanted to see if there were African American or other ethnic groups, businesses, which they are, often it could be the hair, taking care of our hair, or a shop, or a little restaurant. If you're trying to do outreach, if you go to an event that another group is hosting and you support them by paying the $50 for the table, having the little educational pieces, that's how you can really build a really good connection. And so now we've had more memberships in the women's organization. People were more interested because they felt welcome. So I think as we can strengthen our connective tissue across all groups, whether you own a business or not, which I do. So I share that with you all, but many people don't. But maybe they think that the business women are very different, right? But we still have so many connections. So if you can look for opportunities to be present and to support the work that's already going on in different communities, that's a very gentle way of connecting. And then they'll learn more about what you're offering, whether it be the League, the Women's Federation, or the Business and Professional Women. That's how you do it. And I can speak and tell you that, and there are many women of color who really, really want to have a business, whether it be selling Avon or Mary Kay, they really want to have the independent freedom. And so there could be a lot of benefit on both sides to make that effort. So part of us protecting our right to vote is strengthening the bonds and building bridges between women's organizations that might appear to be in silos. And just because I happen to be in several of the women's organizations, I can tell you from the 3 that I'm involved with, we are so much alike. We have such a connection tissue. And guess what? We need to work together because there are, let's look at the reality of what's going on today. There are so many, potential threats and real threats to voting rights. We all are aware and concerned about, the new rules and the limitations on voting, and cutting back on early voting days, requiring, more checks on your signature, requiring more state IDs. In Florida, they've taken away our drop boxes, which was such a wonderful convenience, things of that nature across the nation. So we have a reason to work together. I mean, that is real. That's not just talking about let's maintain. There are people that want certain groups' voices not to be heard. There are people that are not comfortable with everybody having one person, one woman, one vote. They would prefer to block other people out. And frankly, they're admitting it. In the last Supreme Court case, I believe it was the Brnovich case, which was before the Supreme Court, and the Rucho case, representatives from a particular party, they came out and bold-facedly told the court, yes, we want to encourage one party over another. We are very partisan. That is our goal. And we want to change the rules, and we want to push it so that people with one viewpoint are the ones whose voices are heard. They absolutely admitted it. Now, what happened in the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court said there are no federal standards that we can enforce with regards to political gerrymandering. If you don't like what's going on, then in your state, you need to enact laws like we did with fair districts. Florida has done that in 2010, and the league was a very, very big part of that. We have done that. And they actually cited the League of Women Voters case in the Supreme Court order. It cited us literally, and it said, fair districts is how you do it. Those are clear rules, right? So the United States Supreme Court says, states, if you want us to clean up your mess, you get out there and you establish it yourself. They cited to the state of Florida as one of the states, the leading state that has established that. Now, what is our job? Our job is to make sure that these rights are enforced. So as we, again, educate ourselves about our history, we need to also educate ourselves about what's going on now. And in part, you're inviting me to speak to you is part of that education. And so right now we have an opportunity, all of us together, and I will be like a little ambassador because I've been invited to speak at my sorority statewide. I've been invited to speak at some of the men's organizations, fraternities, because of this role I have as the league. And I will be sharing the same message. The message is we have a tool, as the Supreme Court said, we have a wonderful tool, and that's called the fair districts. The fair districts passed in 10 years ago. And what happened, the short story of it was the legislators, they promised to follow them. And that said that you could not have political gerrymandering in the state of Florida when you draw your lines about what group can vote for a particular politician. You cannot do that, okay? So the state of Florida, the citizens have said no more. The people in power at the time were Republicans, and they were mostly drawing the maps because they had the majority in the legislature, which is the legislators to draw the maps. And they all promised to follow the rules, but it turned out they didn't. And they admitted in court, in writing, that they intentionally broke the law. They intentionally did that, okay? The league sued along with Common Cause and other groups, and it was after a few years, it was set aside and the lines were redrawn to be more fair. All right, so where are we now? the census results were just released. We're at the beginning of new redistricting. So one of the ways we can protect our vote, one, we want to make sure we can vote at the polling place, and we don't want limitations. So we need to speak out against limitations. The other way is to understand what is the impact if you have unfair redistricting. Then even though you go to vote, your voice could be limited because they have drawn the line so that your vote, you're not going to be able to get a representative that would meet your needs. They are doing it in a way that only certain representatives can be elected, because they know that they're putting more progressives over here and there's none in all the other groups. So they only get one person when the group of progressives, let's say, or a racial minority, they should have been, that large clump should have been put in 3 other districts. Now, what is the benefit of spreading it around? Because then the representative has to care about more than just their base. They have to be fair to everybody. When you allow people to do that kind of gerrymandering, basically everybody in their group, everybody in their district, feels, looks, sounds like them. So that's why you get this polarization. So redistricting is really, really powerful, and it's something people don't always understand. So ladies, what I'm going to ask you to do is stay aware. The league will be putting out educational pieces, and we are nonpartisan. We don't care who gets in office. We just want the process to be done appropriately, and we want everybody's vote and voice to be heard. So just be aware, talk to your representatives, make sure that when they're drawing their maps, that they know that you're watching and that it's public. And that's they say sunshine is a good disinfectant. So that is something I'm going to ask you to do. So first, of course, educate yourselves, educate ourselves about our history. And why do we do that? One, to know what they did, to be inspired. And Sheri, I got inspired by your words, just the memory. And it always touched my heart to know that Susan B. Anthony worked so hard, but she never saw that change. She did vote, and she was arrested, but she didn't vote lawfully, and what is the message there? Some of the work we do, we may not see the full result in our lifetime. That's okay. We must do this work. We must continue to carry on the successes of the people who sacrificed before us, but we may not see everything. It may be our daughters that see the full benefit of what we do, but we will carry on. Next challenge, share the knowledge that we have gently in our communities. It's very, very important for us to get together and talk amongst ourselves as we're doing tonight, but there's so many people we can influence. And you can think of it sort of like having that conversation about vaccination, and just have that conversation, because all of us, and maybe some of us in the meeting, know someone we love that is afraid of the vaccination. If we call them names and say that's ignorant, they're just gonna ignore us. What's wrong? What is going on? Have that gentle conversation, just as we would with people we care about. We can have those kinds of conversations about voting issues and about redistricting. It's real, it impacts us, it's real. And the third thing that I'll ask everyone to do is look around and see how we can network beyond the groups that we normally might do. Again, it must be done internally, and we must have our celebrations. But I feel that if we look around and we see the connective tissue and the parallel pathways that many women's organizations have, it'll strengthen our voice. And when we can argue against the things that are trying to limit the woman's right to vote. The last thing I want to leave you with, of course, something that's on the horizon that's very important, is a woman's right to choose. And many of us might have personal belief of what we would do. And I myself was raised a Roman Catholic, but I had to step away from my religion in terms of its traditional values to say, but I understand how important it is for each woman to make that decision. I may make a different decision. I certainly am within my right. And I feel like I'm, in my view, I'm still being, a good person in my faith, but I will fight to the tooth for everybody to make that decision. And I think that's something that many of us realize how important that is. And that ties right back to not only voting, but, being that businesswoman if we cannot control our reproduction. So there are challenges right now in our lives. And for those of you who are not aware, Texas has a statute that is doing that. And there are, it's probably going to end up in the United States Supreme Court to decide, what kind of limits can be placed. Now, many of us, we never thought we would see that, right? We never thought we would, people fought so hard and long for those rights. I know I never thought that in my lifetime I would see the clock winding backwards. And with voting rights, I never thought that we would see these things. So we need to be aware of them, work together, and speak bravely against these problems. And once I get going, I can really, spin a yarn. But it's just been a wonderful experience, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the evening, whatever little minutes we have. And I want to report to you, I got 2 out of the 3 right of the questions in the poll. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Cecile. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Cecile? Anybody have, just put your hands up. I see Emma has a question. Go ahead, Emma. Just unmute yourself.
Sorry, not a question, just clapping my hands from afar with one emoji.
Oh,
thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Femi, you have a question?
Yes, this is Femi from the Upper Keys, and I just wanted to say a seaweed and a hello to Cecile. I'm so happy.
okay, Sarah. See, there's a connection right there.
Well done, well done.
Yes.
So, thank you. I do have an official thank you for you, Cecile, and for participating tonight. And as a thank you, we actually have a check to help defray the cost of the research and the publication of the annual League of Women Voters Guide. It seems fitting to donate this to the League, as the check represents actually a residual fund from prior Women's Equality Day events, which were held in Palm Beach County between 2013 and 2014, and they were co-chaired by one of our BPW members, and involved a coalition of other non-partisan Palm Beach County women's groups. So it's very appropriate, I would say. And it did include the YWCA, Junior League Women's Foundation, the League of Women Voters. So it was a very good.
Wonderful.
So the check we're going to present to you is actually a value for that research of $1,815.11 to be precise. So we're happy that we finally are able to write out that check, and we feel that it would be in good hands with you and your organization. So thank you for being here.
I am so grateful on behalf of the League, and I want to tell you, recently we did a lot of GOTV in my area, which suffered greatly from the Hurricane Michael, and we had gotten some grants from different organizations, and the League participated with providing the voters guides and sanitation and some food and stuff. Anyway, we were going out in the community, and some of these little southern towns up north in Florida, people just literally were crying. They were so grateful, tears of gratitude to see the NAACP. We partnered with the NAACP and the League of Women Voters. We went out there, we registered voters, we answered questions, and we had those voter guides, which left like hotcakes. There's a lot of people are not computer literate. Their internet, they just, when people talk about that, if they rely only on the digital, which we do have digital, but to rely only, and want people to know how important they were. People were reading them. Can I get some for my cousin? You know, it was very heartwarming. I mean, to the point that I wish I'd had a video to show you people's, you know, excitement to get the voter guide, and to have education pieces, you know, having nonpartisan organizations come out and explain what the amendments meant, because everybody wants to vote, but they want to know what they're voting for. So this check is going to go a long way, and I will let my board members know what you all have done, and I'm looking forward to continued working together with you, perhaps on some of the issues that I've mentioned. Perhaps we can get together and do something with regards to redistricting, an education piece with the community, or whatever, or any of the things that I've mentioned, or something that you would like to do. We stand ready and very interested, and we're so much more alike than we are different. That's the beautiful thing about it.
Definitely. Thank you. Yes. And I did mention that it was one of the BPW members was part of it, and she was actually is right here, and she's the lady wearing the red hat. I know she doesn't like to be in the spotlight.
Yeah, let's see.
But
the red
Sue
hat.
Banks, thank you so much.
Oh, I love the red hat. There's the red hat ladies. That's another woman's
I know,
group.
another great organization.
Are you in that group? Are you in the? Oh. We gotta make a list. We gotta make a list of all the women's organizations that are doing good work in the community, and wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah. Good. So it's interesting how we keep talking about the joint organizations and how we collaborate with each other. And I wanted to close the evening with a toast. And you know, I actually didn't want to do my own toast tonight. I actually did some research, and I found a toast which was written last year, actually, by Lynn Yeakel, who is the president of a coalition of a national women's equality organization in Philadelphia, and it was for the Vision 2020, and it was the Tenacity Toast. And so I'd like you to join me. Grab your glass, whatever you're happy, you're drinking, and whatever it is. And so last year, President Lynn Yeakel said, on this anniversary of American women's right to vote, we salute the suffragists with gratitude for what they did in their time, and with determination to do what we must do in our time. We honor their tenacity and the work they started. We pledge to complete the unfinished work to achieve equality and justice for all. Cheers, ladies. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm gonna take off the recording. If there's any conversation after, we can do that. But I'd like to thank you all for tonight.
Thank you again.